Johnson, Deputy Secretary of the General of the ITU, our special guest of honor, Dr. Rajendra Kumar, Additional Secretary at MeitY, guest of honor, Dr. Prabodh Seth, Joint Secretary at the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Ms. Monica Desai, Director and Global Head Connectivity and Access Policy, Facebook, Dr. Nirmita Narasimhan, Chairman of our BIF High-Level Committee on ICT for Inclusive Ability for Persons with Disabilities, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Dialogues brought to you by Broadband India Forum in association with our event partner, Bharat Exhibitions. We are also extremely indebted to the support from Adobe and Facebook, our sponsors, as we celebrate Global Accessibility Awareness Day today. I have the utmost pleasure in welcoming each of you to this global event that focuses on the critical aspects of creating awareness, conversations, and action about digital access and inclusion for the 1 billion plus people with disabilities and impairments across the world. The GAAD philosophy states that every user deserves a first-rate digital experience on the web. Someone with a disability must be able to experience web-based services, content, and other digital products with the same successful outcome as those without disabilities. In this context, it might be appropriate for us to recall the beautiful words of the father of the nation, the great Mahatma Gandhi. The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. In tune with the above and its landmark Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016, the central government has clearly stated that the appropriate government shall ensure that the persons with disabilities enjoy the right to equality, life with dignity, and respect for his or her own integrity equally with others. These are very powerful words with great implications for inclusive progress of the nation. And at BIF, we attach great priority to contributions to the community through the enhancement of digital inclusion, embracing persons with disabilities. BIF's dedicated high-level specialist committee on ICT for inclusive ability for persons with disabilities is committed to driving greater ICT accessibility and inclusivity in several areas of digital communications, including high-quality broadband and internet for all, and accessibility-enabled websites, apps, and technology. BIF has also worked closely with the TRAIR regulator and submitted elaborate inputs on ICT accessibility for persons with disabilities. During the formulation of the National Digital Communications Policy of 2018, BIF had submitted detailed inputs in this regard to the DOT as well. The challenges of daily living are compounded for persons with disabilities in India, who constitute a total of 40 to 80 million based on various estimates. But for this vulnerable group, access to information and communications technology is a game changer. And many of them do not have this access at present, especially in today's era where the majority of work is being conducted virtually. In such critical scenarios, access to crucial information through government notifications and announcements, availing of essential services and supplies through e-commerce, financial relief, telemedicine and medical resources, online educational opportunities, and assistance from caregivers can be facilitated through suitable digital platforms via quality broadband services. If device manufacturers offer cost-effective assistive technology, like smartphones designed with universal accessibility standards in mind, this potentially could open up an entire universe of accessibility-related apps and programs for persons with disabilities, which will benefit the elderly as well. At BIF, we believe that ICT accessibility for PWDs in India goes hand in hand with fast-tracking strategies in the NDCP 2018, in which the very first chapter of Connect India underlines this factor in point 1.2, and I quote, ensuring inclusion of uncovered areas and digitally deprived segments of society by A, channelizing the Universal Service Obligation Fund for marginalized communities, women, and persons with disabilities. We need to accord higher priority for the implementation of this clause. Moreover, as all would appreciate for the PWD segment, ICT policies that facilitate work from home or work from anywhere would clearly be very helpful. Hence, the permanent continuance of work from home assisting policies should be considered. Implementing such measures on a priority basis will provide some much needed relief for persons with disabilities and offer a significant boost to Digital India and Make for India missions, resulting in increased GDP and socio-economic growth all around. With these few words, I would once again like to convey my best wishes and compliments to all on this occasion and introduce you to our moderator for this inaugural session, Ms. Karishma Chhabra. Karishma works at Microsoft and is also co-chair on BIF's Committee on ICT for Inclusive Ability for PWDs. A management and business law graduate with over 16 years of experience across different verticals, she is deeply passionate about purposeful digital inclusion and is an evangelist of accessible technologies to empower everyone. She advocates the use of inclusive design principles and has been a speaker at various government, academia, civil society, and industry seminars on use and benefits of inclusive technology. We couldn't have found a more appropriate moderator for this session. Over to you, Karishma, to moderate the rest of this inaugural session celebrating the Global Accessibility Awareness Day.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee, and good morning all. Hello. Welcome to the esteemed speaker and the wonderful audience to the digital dialogue on the occasion of Global Accessibility and Awareness Day 2021, organized by Broadband India Forum. Mr. Mukherjee, I can't agree more that the implementation of the work from home policies for persons with disabilities is the need of the hour. And I think it will help in the sustainable growth of the nation. The more and more inclusion is part of our growth. So with that, you've already introduced me. I'm from Microsoft. I lead accessibility and strategic programs with the legal department of the company. So I have the opportunity to moderate this session, inaugural session today. So thank you all for making time to be with us here. I think I cannot imagine or think a better way to celebrate this day with all of you who have joined us with this shared objective of creating a digitally inclusive ecosystem for 1 billion+ people around the world. I think in today's time, more than ever, we must include everyone, and technology is the vehicle to inclusion. And we see the momentum is only growing. We look at government, industry, civil society, academia, and the community that is working towards enabling this ecosystem, whether it is through partnerships, digital infrastructure, international technology standards for accessibility, and the policies that will foster a responsible governance structure. With that, I welcome you all once again, and let's get started. First up, let me introduce you to our sign language interpreters who will be with us for both the sessions today, the morning and the second half. Dr. Renuka Rameshan, she's the president of Association of Sign Language Interpreters India. Dr. Renuka holds a PhD in social work. She is senior sign language interpreter and trainer with an experience of 20 years in the field. She currently also is an executive member of Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center. The other member that we're going to have with us, the interpreter, is Mr. Saurav Roy Chaudhary. Saurav is a freelancer sign language interpreter. He's done his master's in extension and development studies, and is proficient in English, Hindi, Bangla, Indian, and American Sign Language. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. For those who wish to take the help of the sign language interpreter, please pin the interpreter window onto your screens to have a better experience. I trust everybody knows how to do that, but in case not, if you hover over the window, there's an icon for pin. Just click that and that window will come to the center of your computer screen. Those who wish to keep the captioning on the bottom right, next to the hand raise button, you can find a turn on captions. Again, useful for people who need that. All participants at all times are requested to keep yourselves mute if you're not speaking. The moderator, whether it's myself or whoever is speaking, will determine the opportunity to invite you. Keeping your cameras on is a matter of choice and convenience. However, if there is a loss of bandwidth or any other personal reasons, please feel free to switch that off. The event is being recorded and we'll share the link post the event so that you can broadly share it within your networks, colleagues, and friends. There is the chat window facility that you can use and enable for any questions, which is on the top right, so people can enable and ask questions as we go along. Finally, for our esteemed speakers, since this is a virtual event, sometimes there is a bandwidth lag or feedback. Please keep the pace of your presentation adequate. That will allow the interpreter to follow you. And last but not least, let's be time sensitive to the allocated time so that everyone can have a better experience in participating in this dialogue. With that, let me invite Dr. Nirmita Narasimhan, who's the chairperson of PIF's Committee on ICT for Inclusive Ability for Persons with Disabilities. Dr. Nirmita is a Senior Fellow and Program Director, Asia Pacific G3 ICT, and Program Director with Saksham. She also serves as Policy Fellow with Lion Asia, a regional ICT policy and regulation think tank. Dr. Nirmita specializes in policy research and advocacy related to ICT accessibility. She has worked with several governments in India, abroad, and even intergovernmental organizations. She has authored several reports by policymakers worldwide. She's received several awards, including National Award for Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities from the President of India in December 2020. We can't have a better start. Thank you, Dr. Nirmita, for joining us. The floor is yours. Please take it away.
Thank you, Karishma. So I'm keeping my video off because of bandwidth issues. It's a privilege to introduce BIF's work on inclusion. Our committee came into being about 2.5 years ago when the CHAI launched its consultation paper on accessible ICTs. And I believe at that time, BIF felt a need to engage more in the subject. And we saw a role that BIF could play in catalyzing change in this space. So this committee came into being, and since then, we have been constantly expanding our work across policy making, awareness raising, and program initiatives. At BIF, we believe that every person should have access to any technology, anywhere and anytime. And every person should have access to content and services and technology in the language of their choice and should have the skill to use it. Over the past years, we have been constantly upscaling our engagement in this domain. We started by providing submissions to any policy windows. I believe NDCP was probably the first intervention that we made after we came into being. And after that, we have continued not only responding to accessibility-related policies, but we have brought accessibility across our work. We believe that accessibility should begin at home, and we have constantly been striving to improve the accessibility, usability, and inclusivity of all our meetings and all our communications. We have redone our website to make it standards compliant. Our co-chairs and other committee members have been engaging with various agencies and industries like CDAG, METI, BIS on various issues relating to policies and standards, such as accessible ICT procurement standard and standards for active assisted living. We have also engaged on other issues. We've submitted to the Universal Service Obligation Fund a paper requesting that disability be included as part of the funding stream in the Universal Service Fund Charter. Last year, we brought out a white paper, our first white paper, 6 months after COVID began in India, in a full way. And that paper highlighted the severe challenges that persons with disabilities were facing due to inaccessibility of technologies and how the system had completely crashed for persons with disabilities. And a lot of eminent speakers here were also present and completely supported our event. We followed up with our recommendations to various ministries, and we continue to engage with all of them on the issues. We also had a submission to the Copyright Office requesting that the government of India, in case amendment of the Copyright Act is taking place, the government of India should clarify its position that cross-border sharing of accessible books is permitted under copyright law, because until then there was some lack of clarity on the subject, and persons with print disabilities in India were not able to have the benefit of accessible print books in digital libraries. We've also tried to support program initiatives in this space. We have been trying to, for example, facilitate financial support for the National Accessible Indian Online Library, Sugamya Pustakale, and we hope to achieve some fruition in this going forward. So this is broadly, these are the kind of activities that we've been doing, and we really hope to achieve more and more in this space. This is our first Global Accessibility Awareness Day event celebration, and we hope that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we totally welcome everybody's support and inputs, and to increase partnerships and issues that we can take up and work to create a truly inclusive world going forward. Thank you. Back to you, Karishma.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmata. I think very well said that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot we can achieve together in this journey, and I'm glad we are all working towards it, just starting with today's program. So up next is our next speaker, Ms. Monica Desai, Director Global Head Connectivity and Access Policy, Facebook. Ms. Monica is joining us from the US. We know that it's pretty late for her in the night. So a special thanks for your commitment and dedication. Monica has a rich experience in issues involving accessibility, infrastructure, spectrum, online communication, service providers, and net neutrality. Prior to joining Facebook, she served in senior positions at FCC, including Deputy Chief of Wireless Bureau, Legal Advisor to FCC Commissioner, Chief of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and Chief of Media Bureau. Thank you once again, Monica, for joining us. Please come. We welcome you to share your thoughts with us today. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here, and thank you especially to Broadband India Forum for hosting this important event. As was mentioned, my name is Monica Desai, and at Facebook, I lead our global connectivity policy agenda, including our important work on accessibility. At Facebook, we take this work very seriously, and we've built a variety of tools to enhance access to the platform. As was mentioned, I came to Facebook from working at the FCC previously. At the Federal Communications Commission, I also had oversight over the development and implementation of accessibility policies and rules. After joining Facebook, I was really in awe when I saw how truly committed this company is to including people with disabilities as we build access to the information and connections that happen across our platforms and services. And this commitment really stems from our mission, which is to bring the world closer together. And when we say that, we mean everyone, regardless of ability. So accessibility is fundamental to getting our mission right. So I'd like to start by giving you a few updates on our work in the accessibility space. I'm excited to share how Facebook is advancing digital accessibility by applying cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence to create new features and services to serve people with disabilities. Earlier this year, we introduced the next generation of our automatic photo description technology, or automatic alt text, which describes objects and photos to people who are blind or visually impaired through assistive technology. Driven by AI, we are now able to recognize over 1,200 concepts, more than 10 times as many as our earlier generation, while also providing additional context, such as the count of recognized objects, positional information, and a comparison of the relative prominence of objects in an image. As of March, more than 80% of images displayed on Facebook and Instagram now contain automatic alt text. Closed captioning helps people who are deaf and hard of hearing, and using artificial intelligence, we are providing automatically generated and Instagram TV for ads and for pages. In July 2020, we redesigned Facebook.com to integrate greater accessibility into the website. We've introduced new accessibility tools, techniques, and technology that help people using screen readers what's on a page and find what they're looking for more quickly. There's a new WhatsApp email accessibility support channel for users to share suggestions, ask questions, or report problems. We're also working to ensure that the next generation extended reality technologies encompassing virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality are accessible, and are working with the community and industry organizations to research, document, and distribute XR accessibility guidelines for developers. We are also working to drive innovation in accessibility beyond Facebook. We co-founded and support Teach Access, which is a collaboration of industry, academia, and advocacy that seeks to advance accessibility training in higher education, with the goal of ensuring that future technologies are born accessible. The program includes best practices in accessible software design specifically for this purpose. We're also a founding member of the XR Association, which is dedicated to promoting responsible development and adoption of virtual, augmented, and mixed reality, and committed to accessibility as a foundational consideration of these technologies. We've created open source tools for accessibility and are working to make the popular React Native developer framework used by thousands of mobile app developers fully accessible, which we hope will help accessibility flourish beyond just Facebook's own products. We're also working collaboratively with leaders in the accessibility community and industry to establish and improve accessibility web and assistive technology standards through our participation in the World Wide Web Consortium. At Facebook, disability inclusion and hiring persons with disabilities are also top priorities, so I'll touch on our diverse and inclusive hiring practices. We have many dedicated resources supporting candidates and employees with disabilities, including a dedicated recruiting team which supports candidates with disabilities, a dedicated program team focused entirely on driving awareness and engagement for our current and future employees with disabilities, and a robust accommodations program for candidates and employees for anyone who needs an accommodation of any kind. We also have a global employee resource group, which provides a space for employees who are interested in disabilities to collaborate and talk about their experience, as well as advise and influence our programs. Building products that are more accessible requires a workforce that can represent and advocate for the diversity of our users. So at Facebook, disability inclusion is one of our top priorities. In fact, our company has been named one of the best places to work for disability inclusion 3 years in a row by the American Association of Persons with Disabilities and the Disability Equality Index. I want to end by highlighting some of our India-specific accessibility initiatives. We are partnering with with the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry to do a research paper on the status and opportunities for promoting use of assistive technologies and content for persons with disabilities in India. We are hoping that the research output will help in building out a roadmap to understand the availability, efficiency, and success of assistive technologies for people with disabilities, and to identify an effective strategy for adoption and proliferation of such technology and content. Second, as part of our Boost with Facebook program, we partnered with Cellular Operators Association of India to digitally upskill armed forces veterans and their family members on digital marketing skills with an objective to help them connect with economic opportunities. Veterans include those injured in line of duty or warriors who are disabled. Last year, Facebook partnered with the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, of the Government of India, and launched GOAL, Going Online as Leaders, with an objective to upskill and connect 5,000 youth from indigenous communities with 2,500 industry leaders over the next 5 years. In year one, the program is helping mentor 300 mentees, of whom 22 have a disability. Fourth, under our corporate social responsibility program, Pragati, one of the organizations being incubated is Ginny's Planet, a social enterprise that aims to build a world where nobody feels like an odd one out. Ginny, the lead character, is a 4-year-old girl with a radio club hand. She is also the first doll with a disability in India. Ginny's Planet started in June 2019 with the objective of simplifying and encouraging conversations surrounding diversity, empathy, disability, and inquiry. They do so through dolls, puppets, stories, workshops, and more. So far, they've touched over 2,800 lives directly through workshops and fulfilling over 300 product orders. There are 13 partnerships in place with for-profit and nonprofit organizations. In closing, I'd like to say that we at Facebook are very excited about the future and the potential for technology to improve the lives of people with disabilities. And like my colleagues speaking today and many of you watching this conference, we are hard at work advancing disability awareness, action, and advocacy on multiple fronts. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak with you today and to recognize Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Monica. I think very well said. Accessible tools and technologies are vehicle to inclusion. Simply, all text enables people with visual disabilities to consume content seamlessly. Technologies like artificial intelligence, data analytics, virtual reality are allowing companies, technology companies, to build products that are providing these inclusive experiences and access to a larger world. The culture of empathy definitely goes a long way in journey of inclusion. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing with us. With that, it is my pleasure now to invite our guest of honor, Dr. Prabodh Seth, Joint Secretary, Department for Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Dr. Prabodh looks after various schemes, policies, programs of the government for physical, social, educational, and economic empowerment of persons with disabilities. A 1989 batch IRS officer, he has over 30 years of experience and has earlier served in positions in the income tax department at different places in the country and has led some exemplary initiatives and achievements in the field. Thank you, Dr. Seth, for joining us today. The stage is yours. Please enlighten us with some of your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Karishma. Dr. Malcolm Johnson, Deputy Secretary General, ITU. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Ms. Monica Desai from Facebook. Dr. Nirmita Narasimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good afternoon to you all. First of all, I'd like to compliment and congratulate Broadband India Forum for having organized these digital dialogues. on the occasion of Global Accessibility and Awareness Day. Let me begin before I come to the initiatives that have been taken by our department concerning persons with disabilities. In fact, I have been in this department for almost 4 years and have been dealing with various policies, schemes, and programs of the department concerning the overall empowerment of persons with disabilities, whom our Honorable Prime Minister has given the term Divyangjan. Let me start with the importance of broadband-based technologies and internet, particularly with reference to persons with disabilities, and that will in fact enable all of us to appreciate more how accessibility to information technology, accessibility in the field of information and communication technology is important, particularly for the persons with benchmark disabilities. Now, for persons with disabilities, we have different types of, we have the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. We have schemes for their physical, educational, economic, social, psychological empowerment. But for the effectiveness, for these schemes to become effective, for enabling these schemes to percolate down to the masses, it is very important that information is accessible so that each and every person in the country, each and every person with disability in the country is able to know as to what government is intending to do with regard to persons with disabilities. So that therein lies the importance of accessibility of information, and broadband-based technologies, internet, are very, very important insofar as the ease with which information can be disseminated, information can be transmitted across the country to each and every person with disability in the country is concerned. So herein lies the importance of internet technology for persons with disabilities. Now, coming to the perspective from the viewpoint of the department. And our department, the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, is a relatively new department. Actually, it was born in 2012 out of the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment to give more emphasis on the various schemes, policies, and programs, especially meant for this very important segment of society. So, in fact, as regards the policy concerning persons with disabilities, India is a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which places a lot of emphasis on information and communication accessibility. So once India became a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, then we took the next initiative by passing the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, the RPWD Act of 2016. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016 makes a lot of changes. Actually, it's a watershed in the area of disability policy compared to the Act of 1995. There are major changes which are meant for the betterment and welfare of persons with disabilities. Now, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act places a lot of emphasis on accessibility. There are sections 40 to 46, which are dedicated to accessibility for persons with disabilities. Section 40 talks of accessibility standards for persons with disabilities, as per which the websites have to be made accessible, and for those accessibility standards have been laid down in the Rights of Persons with Disability rules. Similarly, Section 42 talks of information and communication technology and how to make it accessible. It also talks of making all consumer products accessible, all electronic products accessible for persons with disabilities. And then Section 46 talks of accessibility as regards various services being provided to persons with disabilities. So there is a lot of emphasis as regards the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act on accessibility, particularly with regard to information and communication technology. Now, as regards accessibility, the department took a major step forward in December 2015. As we all know, 3rd of December is celebrated as the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So on the 3rd of December 2015, the department came out with a very important program known as the Accessible India Campaign, or the AIC. It's also popularly known as the Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. Now this Abhiyan or this campaign focuses on accessibility in 3 verticals. We have accessibility in built up environment, accessibility in transportation, and accessibility in information and communication technology. So accessibility in ICT forms one of the 3 important verticals of the AIC, and it is on campaign mode. It is being monitored by the department and also by the highest policy recommending body concerning persons with disabilities, that is the Central Advisory Board, which is chaired by none other than the Honorable Minister of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. Now, under Accessible India campaign, the task has been going on for making a lot of state and central government buildings accessible, and for making buses, bus stops, railway stations, or airports, domestic as well as international, accessible. Similarly, in the field of information and communication technology, a major initiative is to make all websites accessible. So under this, 100 websites of central ministries and departments have been identified, out of which 95 have already been made accessible. As regards state government websites, more than 580 state government websites out of 800 have been made accessible. All international airports have been made accessible. 55 out of 69 domestic airports have been made accessible. 41 aero bridges have been provided in airports. So there has been a lot of work. It's to implement the RPWD Act concerning accessibility, and also particularly in the field of information and communication technology. Now, in order to sensitize people about this important campaign, and also for the people to air their grievances, we have started Sugamya Bharat app. Very recently, it was launched in the month of March 2021. And here, any person who is not satisfied with accessibility concerning all these 3 verticals, that is buildings, transport, and information and communication technology, can just log in and they can take a picture and describe as to which building or transport, means of transport, or maybe ICT vertical is not accessible. And then we have a project monitoring unit in the department which sees sends this complaint to the concerned department and monitors and sees to it that the suggestion which has been made is implemented within a stipulated time. So this, in fact, again, is this crowdsourcing app or a Sugamya Bharat app is very, very, very important, because that brings the department closer to the people. That is an effort, an endeavor on the part of the department to make the entire environment accessible for persons with disabilities. So, in fact, apart from our policy, which gets translated into the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, and also the Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan or the AIC, there are a lot of other initiatives which have been undertaken to make the environment accessible. And when we talk of environment accessibility, of course, information forms a very important segment of it. We have a scheme for distribution of aids and assistive devices, and that is known as the Assistance to Disabled Persons for Purchase and Fitting of Aids and Assistive Devices, ADIP, under which we distribute various aids and assistive devices like smartphones, hearing aids, which in fact are instrumental insofar as enabling persons with visual and hearing disabilities to have information accessibility. In fact, we are also doing cochlear implant surgeries, which have resulted in lot of children with hearing impairment getting their hearing ability restored. So that is again a major endeavor in the path of making a life accessible for persons with hearing impairment. Today, we are having 2 sign language interpreters, and these sign language interpreters are making this discussion, this dialogue accessible, particularly for persons with hearing impairment. We have an institute known as the Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, which was set up in the year 2015. At present, apart from being the Joint Secretary in the department, I'm also holding the additional charge of Director of Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center. Its endeavor is to make life accessible for persons with hearing impairment, whether it is through sign language interpreter or through having a sign language dictionary of 10,000 words, or maybe converting all NCERT textbooks into Indian Sign Language. The endeavor of the Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center is to conduct long-term, short-term courses and also undertake various projects for making information accessible for persons with disabilities. Likewise, we have a lot of other initiatives that have been undertaken by the department for making information accessible. The list is very long. I can go on for hours and hours, but I know that I have time limitation. And with that in mind, I would like to say that on the one hand, the department is trying to make life accessible, to make information accessible for persons with disabilities. I think Broadband India Forum and other agencies in the Electronics and Information Technology Department, if they can endeavor to make have more internet penetration, to make information dissemination cheaper and easier, I think it will go a long way in disseminating so many schemes, policies, and programs which are meant for persons with disabilities to percolate down to those peoples. And once people get aware of these policies and programs, they're certainly going to take advantage of this. They will certainly be able to avail of the benefits which have been provided for them under those schemes, which will ultimately result in their well-being, in their betterment, and also for their overall empowerment. With these words, I thank Broadband India Forum for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very, very important subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Seth, for your great remarks and undoubtedly great initiatives by our government, including the Accessible India campaign. I remember when it started, Microsoft also had discussions when the ideation was happening. So we were part of those discussions, and absolutely we are all on this journey together. And you rightly said, partnerships definitely will accelerate this journey, whether it is to create awareness or to promote local innovation. So public-private partnerships and industry bodies coming together will definitely take this journey to a next level. And with the adoption of international standards and procurement policies coming in place, will give a governance structure to this whole process of innovation and inclusion that we are on. So thank you so much for your remarks. And with that, now we move on. I am pleased to call upon our special guest of honor, Dr. Rajendra Kumar, Additional Secretary, METI. Dr. Kumar leads policy formulation and implementation of various schemes under the Digital India, e-governance, electronics manufacturing, data protection, cybersecurity domains. He is recipient of several academic and professional awards. He conceptualized and implemented several major e-governance initiatives in the country, including e-Praman Mobile Seva, for which he also received the UN Public Service Award in 2014. He earlier served in various prominent roles in government of Tamil Nadu. So thank you, Dr. Kumar, for being with us today, and please share your comments with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to everyone. Dr. Malcolm Johnson, my colleague in the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, Dr. Prabodh Seth, Ms. Monica Desai, Dr. Nirmita Narasimhan, all the other distinguished invitees, members in the audience. It's my pleasure to present here on this occasion. I think the Global Awareness Day on Accessibility that serves a very useful purpose in bringing the focus on the issues which are relevant for persons with disabilities in the domain of digital access and inclusion. Since my ministry is dealing with the digital access and inclusion domain at a national level, so let me briefly talk about the steps that we have taken from my ministry side and by the government at a larger level to address the issues of digital inclusion and access, especially with a focus on the persons with disabilities. So as you may be aware, government has launched the Digital India campaign in 2015 with the goal to really transform all sectors of the economy and all domains of governance with digital interventions. And this has really led to a spurt in digitalization in our country in various domains, both in the government and in the private sector. And it has led to increasing share of the digital in our overall economic activities, in our GDP, etc. This increasing digitalization of the various domains has also made the issues concerning accessibility relevant for policy initiatives and for policy interventions. As was mentioned by my colleague earlier and by the previous speakers, in India we have seen a number of initiatives being taken by the government with the objective to enhance access for the persons with disabilities. In the digital domain, let me just mention a few of the steps that we have taken. For the government websites, way back in 2009, that is 12 years earlier, 12 years ago from today, my department came out with a policy on making government websites accessible. This was the government guidelines for the websites to be made accessible. And as a result of this policy, in 2009, a concerted effort was launched by ministry in coordination with all the other departments in Government of India and the state governments to really ensure that the websites of the government departments and agencies were made accessible. These guidelines have been revised from time to time, and the last edition in 2019 also talks about now the mobile apps to be made accessible. So this is a major change in the entire policy framework that we have tried to bring about in the country at national level to ensure that the issues of digital access and inclusion are given the right importance by all the stakeholders. We also now have put in place a framework, what we call as S3WAS, that is to make all the websites even at district level accessible. And this framework, under which a large number of district websites have been designed and have been placed in public domain, they are now accessible by using this framework right from the stage of conceptualization to design and hosting. The government website will be accessible. This is by design. not as a retrofit at a later stage after the websites are developed and hosted. So this is again a major change in the approach that we have to ensure digital access and inclusion for everyone to all the government resources on the internet. So this is, I believe, one of the very important steps that we have taken to really put in place the concepts of accessibility right from the concept and design stage in all things digital that the government departments do at central and state level. Recently, my ministry also has come out with the Vision 2025 for the IT domain for the whole country. As per this vision, the government wants to increase the share of the digital economy from the current level of about 8% of GDP to at least 20%. And the goal is to ensure that the digital share economy goes to at least $1 trillion in terms of the GDP contribution in the next 5 years. Now, this is a massive task before us that the government has set for itself as the overall vision for the country's digital development and growth of the digital economy. And this requires a massive infusion of digital in almost every domain that we can foresee. And this again would require a clear focus on ensuring that all the digital progress, all the developments in digital domain that we see happening, that should be accessible for all the persons, especially with a focus on persons with disabilities. And I'm happy to tell that we are working now with all the government departments on creating what we have named as public digital platforms, where the goal is to ensure that a particular department's all digital resources, including the diverse websites that they currently have, the other resources in digital domain, they are all brought onto one common national platform where the access to citizens and businesses can be made seamless through various interventions, for example, through a single sign-on mechanism or through other technologies, so that the access improves for all persons, including for persons with disabilities, and the service delivery can be made much more efficient than what we are seeing currently. So as you might have seen, typically today a large government department will have a number of websites, sometimes even numbering up to 20, on which the citizens or businesses would be required to log in differently, remember different credentials for login. And so that makes the access so much more difficult. If we can bring all this onto a common national digital platform and make this seamless, uniform access uniform through a single sign-on mechanism, through one set of credentials, that would make life so much easier for everyone. So that's just one part of the vision that we have to transform the digital interfaces that government departments have for their stakeholders, especially citizens and businesses. And this, we believe, already work is going on in many domains. You might have seen the National Digital Health Mission, which has been launched by our Prime Minister in August 2020. That is one example of the national public platform that we envisage. That would happen for all the government departments. And this national digital health platform that I'm talking about, this aims to provide a unique digital health ID to all citizens in India and a single point access to all the healthcare facilities in both public and private sectors to all citizens. So this is one vision for one domain. We are working with all ministries to formulate similar large transformative initiatives to ensure that their digital interfaces can be transformed. And in that transformation, we are keeping the accessibility issue as one of the central elements. And this, I believe, would really help in ensuring that the focus on accessibility is given due importance, and we can make all our digital assets, all digital resources accessible and usable for everyone. There are a number of other domains where we are very active in encouraging a startup, including by people who might have disabilities. We have a number of centers of excellence. 22 of them are working right now across the entire country in partnership with industry associations and industry and with state governments, where we are providing opportunities to entrepreneurs in digital space, in digital technologies, in new emerging domains, for example, artificial intelligence, then IoT, 5G, etc., augmented reality domain, blockchain, where a number of our young people are very actively participating in doing research and R&D, research and development, and bringing those technologies to the mainstream, where the industry can implement them and really gain advantage from the huge talent base that we have in our country in this space. So this is again one of the major areas where we are focusing with the goal to really enable our young people to come forward and take advantage of the emerging opportunities in the digital space. So let me convey my best wishes on this occasion of Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And I'm sure that events of this type would really go a long way in really bringing these issues to focus, and also allowing the people with disabilities to learn about the steps being taken to make the digital accessible to them, and also allow them information and knowledge about these resources available to them for easing their access to the internet world. So thank you very much. I would like to place on record my appreciation for this event to the organizers, and I would really like to convey best wishes also to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for these deep insights and transparency in sharing the vision for digital inclusion of persons with disabilities in India. Can't agree more on your point about inclusive design. I think accessibility by design than retrofitting will not make inclusion an afterthought. And the growth of digital economy is paramount. Inclusion certainly is a key driver. So thank you for those comments. And now moving on, it is my great pleasure to invite our chief guest, Dr. Malcolm Johnson, Deputy Secretary General ITU, to share his experience and insights with us. Dr. Johnson is also joining us from the US, so again, late night for him. Truly appreciate the passion and commitment in being here with us today. Dr. Johnson is a renowned veteran in international standardization space. He has earlier served as a director of ITU's Telecommunications Standardization Bureau, spearheading activities in cybersecurity, climate change, and accessibility. He was also international coordinator at Ofcom, director of UK's Radio Communications Agency, and European coordinator for WRC 93, WRC 95, and WRC 97. So thank you, Dr. Johnson, and the mic is over to you, please.
Well, thank you very much, Karishma. Actually, I'm not as badly off as Monica. I'm in Switzerland. So only 3.5 hours.
Great
difference.
Great relief.
So thank you very much. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, and friends, good morning. For some, good afternoon, good evening. Namaskar. I'm very pleased to join you again this year to celebrate the Global Accessibility Awareness Day and to continue the excellent collaboration between ITU and Broadband India Forum, especially on this important topic, which has always been a key priority for me and a subject in which I have taken a very personal interest in ever since I joined ITU back in 2007. So I'd like to thank my good friend TV Ramachandra, president of BIF, for the kind invitation to join you. I'm very sorry to hear he's not well, and I hope he will soon make a full recovery. We all have our deepest sympathy with you in India for the terrible situation you're facing with this second wave of COVID, and our hearts are with you at this difficult time. Global Accessibility Awareness Day was launched in 2012, inspired by a blog by web developer Joe Devon, to get everyone talking, thinking, and learning about digital accessibility for people with disabilities. So this was an excellent example of Mahatma Gandhi's mantra, be the change that you wish to see in the world. We've now been living in a virtual world for over a year, to work, to study, access health advice, and keep in touch with friends and relatives. That's providing you have a connection and can make use of the services and the applications. And with over 1 billion people living with some form of disability, it's a major concern that they may not be able to benefit in this way. The number of persons affected by a form of disability in the next 30 years is estimated to reach half of the world's population. What we do on this special day and beyond will decide what kind of world we will rebuild after this pandemic is over. Last year, I was pleased to join you for the launch of the BIF white paper on ICT accessibility for persons with disabilities in India, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, and quite a few months into the pandemic. I was very impressed with that, very pleased to see the recommendations, which I very much hope have helped make a difference for persons with disabilities in India during this pandemic. It was very good to hear from Dr. Seth and Dr. Kumar the very impressive initiatives that have been taken by the government of India. Congratulations to you on all those efforts, especially the Accessibility India campaign and making all government ministries' websites and platforms accessible. Inter-ministry coordination is very, very important, and it's very good to see that that's happening in India. ITU is currently working with the International Labour Organization, ILO, to identify best practices in the design and development of accessible and inclusive online job applications and recruitment systems to allow all persons, including persons with disabilities, to benefit. The Green Paper recommendations also included the widespread adoption of universal design standards, and that's something which ITU, as the UN Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, recognizes in all the work we do on standards. And since 2008, we've had an accessibility checklist to ensure that all the standards we develop provide for accessibility. Of course, the development of standards in ITU relies heavily on our industry members, including Microsoft and Facebook, I'm pleased to say. So many thanks to them for their contribution to our work, especially on accessibility. International standards are important to ensure interoperability and bring down costs, to make devices and services more affordable through the economies of scale of a global market. As we know, almost half of the world's population is still offline, and most of these are living in remote and rural communities. So bringing affordable connection to them is a major goal of ITU, which is why I was pleased to see the recommendation in the Green Paper to incorporate ICT accessibility and assistive technology requirements for persons with disabilities in the Universal Service Charter. ITU was one of the first standards bodies to pioneer standards for persons with disabilities, with the standard ITU-T V.18 in 1990, a major landmark at that time, which allowed for different and previously incompatible text telephones to operate in different countries. And almost 20 years later, when I was the director of the ITU Standards Bureau, the ITU World Telecommunications Standards Assembly adopted the first resolution, ITU resolution on accessibility in 2008. This resolution mandated ITU to document best practice, review its services and facilities for accessibility, and to work on programs to progress accessibility in developing countries in particular. And the resolution recognized the need to include persons with disabilities in the development of standards, which is something ITU strives to do. We provide sign language or captioning in most of our meetings. We also have an audio-based indoor and outdoor network navigation system at our premises in Geneva for persons with vision impairment, a system which meets the ITU standard. And ITU has continued its work during this pandemic through virtual meetings, and accessibility remains one of our core focuses. ITU working on many collaborative projects and initiatives, including with the WHO on using AI for health. During this year's WSIS Forum, which is currently in its final week, a special track explored how ICTs can be optimized to help people live with disabilities, including in areas such as assisting people with blindness and vision impairment, universal design, and showcasing emerging assistive technologies. We also started a new track looking at how ICTs can help older persons. And we held a very successful hackathon of innovations to help older persons. And we introduced a new special prize for projects in this area. So a collaborative, multi-stakeholder approach, such as we have in the WSIS Forum, spanning governments, industry, academia, civil society, and relevant organizations, is crucial to help people break cycles of exclusion and poverty while accelerating the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So let's continue to collaborate together to build a combination of international technical standards and legal and regulatory frameworks for a world where nobody is left behind and where everyone can meet their full potential. So thank you very much for your attention. Dhanyawad.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Great comment. Appreciate your remarks and especially being with us here today. I think it so resonates that being together in partnerships will definitely foster digital inclusion and work an inclusive society. So I just want to quote here from Henry Ford, which says, "Coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success." So I think when all of us are coming together and working to make this inclusion journey a success, we'll definitely get there. So with that, we come to an end of our inaugural session. There is a lot of goodness and hope that we are going to be a digitally inclusive society. Coming up on the other side will be a deeper discussion on importance of staying connected during the COVID environment and role of standards. Our next session will begin in about a few minutes, but before that, I will just request Mr. Arun Mukherjee to give us a vote of thanks. Mr. Mukherjee.
Thank you, Karishma. Thank you so much. I'd like to say a very big thanks to Dr. Malcolm Johnson. ITU has known to be the spearheading the charge in ICT accessibility work globally. And so we are very honored and grateful to you to come and address the session today. Always an honor, sir. Thank you. It's been very heartening to hear what the government is doing. And Dr. Rajendra Kumar, sir, thank you so much for giving us so much information on what the ministry is doing, giving so much importance to accessibility. The fact that all mobile apps are being made accessible, wonderful news, sir. I think Karishma has already given some points on what you have done in the ministry. So I will not go into that and take so much time also, sir. Dr. Prabodh said, Sir, many thanks. I think your step on preparing a grievance facility for people is wonderful. The idea of making the facilities that both that the government in total is doing for the people of India, it's a terrific step, sir, for not just making accessibility available, but awareness of the accessibility facilities that are being provided. Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you for giving us so much information here, sir. Monica, wonderful of you to join from America and given us your inputs. I think it's quite commendable what Facebook is doing. And we've many times said that apps are going to drive the economy, and an app, a leading and such a well-known app and well-used app like Facebook is setting a lead for others to follow, perhaps. So wonderful. Thank you for giving us that input over here. Thank you for your guidance always, and for chairing the committee on PWD and giving us your expertise and guidance always. Thank you for your inputs here. And Karishma, thank you for the inspiration and guidance, not only in moderating this, but also on our PWD committee also. Thank you for that. I would like to thank in absentia Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, who is the heart and soul of this PWD committee. Actually, he has been pushing it from Broadband India Forum. He is unable to be with us today. He's had a mild infection and he has been asked to rest. So he has asked us to convey his heartfelt thanks to everybody who has, especially the speakers who've taken the effort to come in and give their inputs, and to all the participants. His thanks are extended to all of you. Thank you, Rajat, for laying a foundation very well for this session at the start. And I would like to now announce, as Karishma has already mentioned, the next session is about to start. The link is the same, so you can either leave for 2 minutes and come back, or you could stay on, either which way. Please, your mics should be kept on mute, and I leave that now for Mr. Dinesh Chand Sarma and hand over to him for the next session. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.